Hey guys, welcome back to my shop. So I was driving back to work the other day, and there was a cabinet shop, and the guy was throwing away a bunch of his panels, and I asked him if I could have a couple of the ones he was throwing away, and sure enough he said yes. And so basically, as you can see, my table saw, I took off the wings and the tube that locks it down. I've been wanting to replace the wings on my table saw for a while now. I just had the two metal wings that came with the Ridgid saw, and they're not great and they're kind of ugly. And originally I was going to do a butcher block style glue up and make that into the table saw, which I think would have looked cool, kind of like the top of my bench. But it was complicated because it needed to be a certain size, and it would have been a pain in the ass to get flat and all that stuff. So I had been putting it off for a long time. And when I saw what he was throwing away at that cabinet shop, which is this plywood, it's 7/8 inch plywood covered in Doug fir, and it looks really cool. And I'll give you some close-ups in a little while. But it's Doug fir, so I brought it home. I put a whole bunch of coats of polyurethane on it, and then I prepped it. The panel wasn't big enough, the ones he was throwing away, because he was just throwing away parts. So I jointed it, or I put two pieces together using dominoes for strength. And then the other thing I did is, since the table saw, when I drilled the holes, when I drilled the rails for the Very Super Cool Tools fence, since it already had the holes drilled, I wanted to try something different on how to approach this. And I bought the Wood Whisperer thread taps, and I was originally going to wait for those to come in so I could do it here, but I couldn't help myself. I had to do it now, so I ended up using just regular metal taps to do this. And I'll show a demonstration on how I did it, because there is a couple of things that are different when you're threading into wood than when you're threading into metal. But basically the construction of these is the top piece, and then on each side I put a piece of maple, which will help the board, which will help stiffen the board, but also it gave me something hard to thread into. So these are threaded, I think they're 5/16, 18, or quarter 20. And so they're threaded on the sides, and basically you just put it into where the wings go and put the bolts in, thread them in. And I'm probably going to end up putting a nut behind them just to be safe, but you wouldn't need to because the wood is threaded itself. So this is the small side of the extension. The other thing I did, and let me bring you in closer to the table saw. So the other thing I did is I added this aluminum angle to the side. Originally, the wings that go here originally get bolted in this way, but that was going to be hard with the wood. So what I did is I put this aluminum angle, and so it rests on here, and then I can level it using these, because I gave the holes in the aluminum angle a little bit of slop room, so that when you tighten the bolts you can align it and then get the top flush. The other thing I did, it's why this is higher, I took the initiative, since I had this off and I was able to do whatever I wanted. Anything I need to store near, my eye protection, the table saw, I never had a place to put it, right? So it always ended up being in a cabinet next to it, and I had to go walk and get it and stuff like that. So what I did, and I'll show it to you, on the bottom of this one, I added these two blocks, which serve two purposes. One, it helps keep this straight so it doesn't bow. And two, I put rails on it, drawer slides, and I'll be able to have a drawer in the front. So everything's ready to be mounted. I've been waiting a while for the polyurethane to set. So now that that's done, all that's left is really just going to be putting it back into the saw itself. And then I do want to show the demonstration on how I threaded the maple sides. So this is just a scrap piece of maple, but it helps me show you how I did the tapping itself. The one thing I want to tell you is when you're tapping into, this is a 1/4-20 nut. And when you're going to tap this into a piece of metal, they tell you to drill it with a certain size drill bit, and I can't remember what that is. I think it's, I'm not even going to say, I don't even remember. But basically, when they thread into metal, that hole needs to be bigger. But when you're cutting into wood, this tap will do most of the cutting anyway. So I found that by making the hole, the relief hole that you drill in first, smaller than what they tell you to do, the bolt fits much tighter. And that's a good thing when you're doing it in wood, because you don't need that clearance. It'll slide perfect into the wood. So this is the way I did it. Basically, I always use an awl just to mark where I want to go, because it makes the drill bit cut nice and straight. And you can do it on the drill press. Will probably make it straighter. I'm just going to demonstrate with a hand drill. But basically, the first hole I drill, I use a countersink bit because it's a nice small hole, and it gives me a countersink, which makes it easier to fit this one right in the center. Now this drill bit is one drill bit size smaller than what they tell you to drill for a 1/4-20 bolt. Okay, so then I drill the hole with that. Then I take my 1/4-20 tap, and that hole feels like it's really small because this won't go in, but since it's wood, it'll cut right through it. And I usually put my drill on the number 1, which is a slower speed but more torque for this. And that's that, right? So now the bolt fits in perfectly, and that bolt ain't going nowhere, right? This is never coming out. It's plenty strong for this. Okay, so I just want to take a minute to talk about this setup for a second. Okay, so using this method where I put this the top on my table saw, leveled it, got it perfect, and then marked the holes through the steel rails. The holes were already there, so I had to mark exactly in the center so I can drill the hole. Okay, so that method with tapping the wood, right, requires you to get the mark of your hole and the drilling of the hole and the tapping of the hole exactly in the center of your rails, because you've already leveled it, right? So you have no room to maneuver up and down. And somehow I got really lucky with the big piece, because it felt level, and when I put the screws in, when I tapped it, everything went really well. So I was really happy with that. I was like, this is perfect, this is easy. Well, when I was doing the small one, I don't know if I got lenient or just sloppy or whatever, but I did the front and they fit well, they were level. And then when I did the back, even though I had leveled the table, I guess when I drilled the hole, one of the holes must have moved a little bit, so when I tighten it and it goes into the countersink of the rails, it shifts it just a little bit so where it's no longer flat and level. And there's not much you could do at that point because the hole is threaded. So the only thing you can do, and this is the other method of doing this, that actually might be a better method, but I wanted to do the tapping because it just, ever since I got Wood Whisperer put his thread taps on the market, and I can't wait to get them. I've been wanting to try something like that, so I was really excited about doing it. But so on the back it didn't work. And so I used the traditional way of doing it. Basically what I did is I drilled the back holes oversized, right? So now the bolt doesn't thread into the wood, it just goes through the wood. You know, it's the hole is bigger than this. It's for it just fit, this bolt is too small, but the bolt fits through it all the way through. It comes out this side, and then you put a nut and you tighten that nut, and then that way you can level. And since the hole is bigger than it needs to be, it gives you a little wiggle room to move the table up and down. And then once you get it perfect, then you can tighten it with the bolt. I think, my guess is that would be a better solution for the entire thing, just because it gives you that adjustability. I like the fact that I threaded them. It made it a lot more fun. And I don't really have to use nuts behind it if I don't want to. I probably will just for safety, but those threads into that wood will be strong enough for sure. Okay, so I'm using these clamps just to tighten the rails a little bit so that it doesn't fall through. Okay, so basically what I have to do is, on this side, since I have that aluminum angle on there, I cut a rabbet on this side of the top. It should fit right there. There we go. And then this comes down. And I just have the clamp right now to tighten it, to help hold it while I put the bolts in. I just use a mallet to sort of get everything into place. And as you can see, it just bolts in. So this just bolts in like this. And it's basically ready, right? So I'm going to do this one. And the back ones are done the same way. Alright guys, so the final piece of the puzzle was the drawer. And I put the face on it, dug for a face. The color doesn't exactly match the top of the table, but it's close enough. It looks nice. Here I have all the stuff that I keep in here, you know. And basically, it just fits under my table saw. And I was originally going to add a drawer pull, but it's got enough of a lip underneath that I can pull it out. So that'll be a great little addition. So that's the table saw build. Hope you enjoyed it. I really did, and thank you. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.